Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalina. Let's talk leadership.
This episode would not be possible without Anchor. It's free and the easiest way to make a podcast. They're creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hi, it's great to be back with you in another episode of this show. Today, I would love to chat with you about another character trait, or perhaps even we could call it a skill, which is understanding. And I had a really interesting chat with a fellow at a cafe this morning who essentially was talking about how marriage is teamwork. And I said, yeah, I agree in my experience so far, and it's a give and take, sure, and you need to give more than you're taking in any span of time that you want to consider. It's always good to be giving. And I thought, okay, but what have I noticed with the couples that I coach? And if you didn't know that about me, I do couples coaching alongside my other projects, and it's really near and dear to my heart because it is with veterans and first responders in the Canadian Armed Forces and in the police districts, and it can also be paramedics, nurses. So it's really interesting to chat with individuals who are putting their lives on the line and really have been in life or death situations, are hypervigilant, have been diagnosed with PTSD, and I work with them and their spouses to navigate that diagnosis, as well as really coming together in some form of intimacy, understanding, further connection in their quote-unquote new normal that they are navigating when one partner is dealing with so much on a mental, emotional, and oftentimes physical level. And what I've noticed in coaching these couples, which is absolutely my honor, is that most of them are married for 30 plus years. They've weathered true storms in life, whether that be separations and reconciliations with each other, kids, grandkids, being away from each other for months, if not a year or more at a time, correspondence via letters back in the day, where really you are sort of sitting on the edge of your seat as a spouse, waiting for some sign. It's not like today when somebody doesn't answer your text message in a couple hours and it's like, where are you? What are you doing? Are you ignoring me? It's, you can go a week or so without hearing from or more without hearing from your spouse, and you've just got to trust, and you've just got to have faith. And I find myself concerned with that point, the lack of faith that I'm seeing across younger couples, across individuals who are conditioned and used to very instantaneous responses, myself included. And that's why it worries me, because I see it and feel it firsthand, where we've become very accustomed to instantaneous one-day delivery type responses. We all know that and have felt the shifts of that in our culture, where you better answer me in an hour or instantly, or else it's not fast enough or efficient enough, or I'm not going to wait. And well, I think what we're losing because of this convenience and the rapid nature of response times and just wanting acknowledgement so instantaneously is that we're losing faith and we're losing understanding. And I want to just unpack it a little bit. Definitely don't want to go on too long about this topic, but I do want to share, I suppose, what I've learned from, I want to say hundreds, if not over 1,000 hours of couples sessions at this point, not just with veterans, but in my own practice. And what I've seen is the couples that find unity and find understanding and find compassion for each other and really weather the storms of life are those that are willing to find understanding and will work toward that and don't give up and have a sense of, this is a commitment I made to this person and we're going through life together, and truly they embody what marriage, which is a union, as the pastor who married, I say pastor every time, the priest. I don't know why I say pastor. The priest that married my husband and I, he very strongly shared in our service, 1 + 1 = 1, and we had a bit of a chuckle and found it somehow comical in the moment, but truly that concept has stuck with us since we got married. And I think that's what I see in successful couples, is that they really do embody this unit, and the way that they do that is through understanding. And understanding doesn't mean acceptance. It doesn't mean approval, or that you fall over and just defer to the other position, even if it's voiced passionately and strongly, which I get pretty passionate, and sometimes I'm working on being very careful about bulldozing and really hearing all sides and making sure that I'm understanding. And so I just want to define this a little bit. And what I find understanding to be at this point in my life is really mirroring back to the other person what it is that they've said, and in that connecting to them in a deeper fashion and in a way that makes them feel heard and seen and understood ultimately. And so how do we do that? Well, what I've noticed I'm sharing with couples again and again is, in order to make sure that the other person feels heard, understood, and this is a generalization, but oftentimes it's the woman who feels resentful and like they've shared their grievances or concerns and they get shrugged off and not validated. And I mean, men too. I find the complaint on that side is often a little bit different. And this, again, is a generalization, so don't rake me over the coals for this. But women often feel like they say things again and again. It becomes, to the audience, nagging or complaining. And they feel like a broken record that doesn't get the acknowledgement on what the grievance or issue, frustration is. And so what helps and what promotes understanding in this context is, hey, I have this issue. I'm really annoyed, frustrated, angry, I feel disrespected. Whatever word it is that a person, man or woman, and anyone is using with you, it's really helpful to backtrack that. And that's what consolidates the speaker's, it affirms the speaker's output. So I say something to you, right? I say, I'm really frustrated because we had a plan to meet at 5 o'clock. You didn't call me. You were late. It's 5:30, which, by the way, never happens with my husband because he's like a Swiss clock and always on time. I am the one that could use some time, be more timely. But it's just the example that popped into my head. So, I'm frustrated because you're late, and that makes me feel insecure or annoyed or unimportant to you, disrespected. So I say, I'm frustrated because you showed up at 5:30. You didn't call to tell me you're going to be late, and that makes me feel unimportant. And so then if my husband says, or your partner, whatever side it is, says, well, okay, but I was late because I had another email to write, and my meeting was running late, and my boss wanted me to stick around, or I was in traffic, or whatever, right? And they start justifying because they feel attacked, rather than seeing that as a bid for connection and an opportunity to reassure and acknowledge, because that's what it is. And this is definitely just a men are from Mars, women are from Venus, or just different communication styles. That's actually a brilliant book. I'll link to it because, my God, it'll change your life. I think it changed mine for sure. It's just a different way of communicating. And so right off the bat, many, many couples, doesn't matter what kind of couple, and I mean that in terms of sexuality, this is not necessarily a man-woman thing. It's just one partner will feel slighted, will feel unimportant, or will feel not good enough, will feel disrespected in some format. And the other partner feels attacked, vilified, like they're wrong, maybe like they're not good enough as well. So here we are, two perfectly imperfect beings wanting to love on each other and give each other a great life and partnership, and it's a pattern. And I think of the infinity symbol because that's what our couples therapist always used, and she was brilliant, and she used emotion-focused therapy, and I'll link to that as a practice as well. It's a concept that I also utilize with my clients, and I think it's brilliant. I'm not certified in it, but I have undergone the process myself with my husband, and think it's vital to understanding the patterns in your relationship, because we really do act out these core patterns across so many scenarios. I've had couples argue about rulers, coffee, going for a walk, parking the car, catching a flight at the airport, like little daily things that you would think, why are we arguing about who's booking the doctor's appointment? In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter, but it matters because that core challenge is being touched in that moment. And so it's inflaming that core insecurity or belief of, I'm not good enough, I'm not important enough, I don't matter. One of those core things is being inflamed. And so we do the dance, and really a relationship is so a dance. So I come back to the strategy, which is the very first step toward understanding, again, not acceptance, not agreement, understanding. To me, what I've found works with myself and other couples is somebody says, I'm annoyed because it's 5:30, you didn't call, and I feel unimportant. And if the other person answers and says, okay, so you're angry that I'm always late and you think that I don't care about you. Sounds similar to what I said, right? But if somebody said that to me, I'd say, no, that's not what I mean. And why? Now we're already kind of inflamed, and it's like, you don't get it. Have you ever had that moment with your partner? You don't get it. You don't understand. You don't understand me. You're not listening. But what's happening is actually it's just a mimicking relay that's not happening. The backtracking is not happening accurately. And so it needs to happen, and it might seem awkward at first. It might seem like you're being a parrot at first. It might seem stupid at first. It might seem over the top, whatever, robotic. And I've had couples tell me, this is weird. Sure, have it be weird a couple times. But let me tell you, it'll change your life. What you do, and it's simple, is I'm annoyed because it's 5:30, you were late, you didn't call, I feel disrespected. Okay, those are a lot of points. Maybe you can't remember them all. But you start with, okay, I hear you. You feel disrespected. And the moment that you mimic, you parrot back, you backtrack the exact same word. And this is a foundational element to the coaching training that I did as a solution-focused coach. This is a technique that allows you to be effective in having a conversation. You mirror that person exactly. And if you want to take it a step further, not only do you say, I hear you, you're annoyed that I didn't call and I was late, and you feel disrespected. And the moment you explain back exactly what that person said, you are in much better waters, because they'll look at you, they'll soften to some degree, and they'll say, yes. Or they'll say, that's right. That's a good one. That's from Never Split the Difference. You want someone to say, that's right, not you're right. That's right, because you're right is somebody deferring and just trying to get you off their back, right? Oh, yeah, you're right. It's like, shut up. That's what they're, yeah, you're right, go for it. They're giving up, they're deferring, they're not actually willing to have the conversation, so they're deferring to you so that you go away. So someone saying you're right, that's problematic. If they say that's right, that's when they feel that you've understood. And that's what we're going for, at least in this conversation, right? Is understanding is a first step. And if you're sitting there going, well, okay, but what are we going to do about it? What about the solution? What about, okay, so I've understood them, now what? Well, you're going to have to wait for another episode, and you're going to have to practice this first. I guess loosely speaking, I could say once you have understanding, then you're moving toward reconciliation in a team format, which is, okay, what are we going to do to move beyond this? That's probably the question I would ask, right? So, okay, you both understand each other. It's like, so how do we want to approach this? So the issue at hand, the topic, the problem is external, and you're both finding a solution to it, rather than your partner being the problem and finding a solution to your partner's, let's say, grievance, where then there's character defamation. You're really, you're stupid, you're this, you're that, and then you're putting the person's character down, and rather than dealing with the fact that, okay, you relate, next time let's do 1, 2, 3, and this is why you want to collaborate on that, right? Because if the partner says, okay, yeah, I hear you, you're disrespected, then the other person has to feel that that's genuine. The person who is backtracking needs to apologize, needs to say, will you forgive me? So it's, hey, I hear that I upset you. I'm sorry for that. And if you're not sorry for that, well, then you need to keep talking and finding understanding, because it's not that you agree with the person in terms of whatever they're saying. It's that you don't want to hurt them. So you're apologizing for the fact that it's caused them distress of some sort and frustration. And you're not, as a loving partner, you're not there to cause distress, right? Like, nobody's walking around being like, aha, I want to ruin your day, especially your spouse or your partner. That's not what we're doing. Generally speaking, right? We're not there to create issues. We generally want to be loved and heard and understood, and like we've got a partner that has our back. So, okay, you backtrack to the person. I'm annoyed that you da-da-da-da-da. Okay, I hear you, you're annoyed, you feel disrespected, you've backtracked. They're like, yeah, that's right, that's exactly it. And it's like, of course it's exactly it. You just said exactly what they said back to them. And I don't say this trivially or lightly. If you do it with a sense of, any sense of being demeaning or trivializing it with your tone of voice, that's a problem. And that's another layer of this, which is you're mirroring them in their words specifically, but you're also partnering with them with a tone of voice and with their body language. And these are two things I'd love to explore more, and we will, because it's so useful and it's just not discussed as much as it should be. I've been obsessed about body language since I was in my teens, and actually it was made fun of incessantly by my closest childhood friend and friends about it, because I had books on body language and I was studying, okay, why do people point their feet toward the door? And I've had many conversations where it's like, yeah, but this is not an end all be all, and sure, it's not, but nonverbal communication is a huge source of information that we often unconsciously take note of, and that's why we have gut feelings, because we're actually processing so many different stimuli that our conscious minds don't even take into account or don't recognize. There'll be another episode for sure on interpreting body language, looking at tone of voice. I think those are two separate episodes that would be hugely valuable for anyone who wants to practice this understanding piece further. But to at least add in a bit of value about that here, I would say it's about the same concept, mirroring. So if you're talking about a difficult subject and that person is pleading with you and they're frustrated and they're looking you in the eye and they're trying to come closer to you, and you are pulling away, not looking them in the eye, you're on your phone, you're moving toward the door, you're focused away, you're kind of not engaged in a physical capacity, your body language is not saying, I'm here, I'm listening. You might hold their hand, and again, this is depending on the situation. I do have to put a disclaimer, right? Like triggers and such, you could really have, someone might not want to be touched if they're frustrated. Like there's some level of nuance here where you need to know your partner. You might have to ask for permission depending on their background. Like it's all very situational. So I'm trying to give useful advice while also considering everybody's got a unique situation. But know your spouse, ask for permission, ask and say, hey, do you want to sit down and talk about this further? Like, can I hold your hand? I really want to connect on this. I want to hear you. I want to understand you. And in that sense, with that essence, it's like, yeah, sure, I want you to hear me. That's why I'm frustrated and I'm getting louder and louder. And that's actually another concept to consider, which is high and low volume people. So in some marriages, well, most, it just depends. You can have two people that are high volume. So those are the couples that gets louder and louder, and they kind of stack on top of each other, and that's the explosive argument, when two people express outwardly and get more and more angry and more vocal or outwardly expressive about that. Then you have people that are low volume, so any sense of distress or frustration, it's like, whoa, you're talking too loud, you're getting too amped up, I feel threatened, and they shut down. And that's a low volume. They, to some degree, retreat into themselves. Leave me alone. I need time to process this. I can't. And most people will hit a certain wall with that at some point, right? Where it's like, oh, okay, this is too much. This is overstimulating. I got to get out. I got to get out of here. And so oftentimes there's a partner that's low volume and a partner that's high volume. So one is getting louder and louder, and the other partner is retreating further and further. And that's where there's a lack of understanding as well, because one is overstimulated, one is retreating, the other one is getting closer and closer. And it's like a cat-mouse situation. Have you ever had that? Yes. Yes, I've seen it time and time again. So, okay, back to our model, right, which is, hey, I have this grievance. You backtrack, you understand, you say exactly what it is they've said. And if you're really aiming for the stars, you're also modeling them, their body language, their tone of voice even. And what you can do, and what we do as coaches, is you model somebody's body language, you model somebody's tone of voice, you model let's say like me, I get really passionate, I speak quickly, I'm really high energy. You model that person, and if you're trying to bring them back down, if you want to bring in calm or relaxation, then you don't come in at a level 2 energy to somebody that's a level 10. You meet them at a level 10, and then you slowly, right, we kind of bring them into another place. And that's what we do as coaches. Same thing. If somebody comes in at a level 2, right, and we want to start slow. We want to start where they're at. They're pensive. We start there, and then we bring them further along into maybe a little bit more excitement. Maybe we ask some questions that get them to vision. And so further and further we say, hey, yeah, and what if you had that? And what would that be like? And tell me more. And what do you notice? And all these little statements and questions that get somebody amped up again. And then they're excited. And then the tone of voice gets going. And you hear it, right? As I record, it's actually funny. I see the little bars that show the audio, right? And it's like, it's a lull. It's almost like the waves of the ocean. I see the, what would you call this? I don't know. Can't think of the word. It's like I want to say sonograph almost. Like it reminds me of a sonograph, but that's not right. But anyway, so you see how the voice, we really do bring somebody into this lull, right, of our energy. And so that's if you're, as I was saying, if you're aiming for the stars, that's where you're shooting, right? You not only are mimicking exactly what they say, you're going beyond it, and you're really mimicking where they're at. And of course, this is like, again, disclaimer, we're not talking about violence or if you're getting into any territory where you're physically threatened, you feel unsafe, like that's a hard stop, leave the room, like notify the person. That's a different territory that we're talking about. And I've seen couples where there's a lot of violence, and that's incredibly serious and threatening. And I've been in those situations myself, unfortunately, and it's a challenge. And so, if we're going beyond the threshold of normal conversation and you feel physically threatened and like violence is coming toward you, and of course if you feel verbally abused, that's another option to say, look, we're stopping here because this is too much, and you have that right, and that's not where we're at right now. We're talking in the territory of we're both feeling safe, like physically and emotionally safe. So that is a precursor to this, because if that's not existent, then this type of solution is not happening for you, and we need to talk other methods and other support mechanisms, like perhaps some format of third-party arbitration, somebody right in the middle, like a therapist or an arbitrator, depending on what it is you're talking about. But for the purposes of our conversation, I would say that's a really solid start. And then once you have that understanding of, yeah, that's exactly the problem, then if you can genuinely, as the person who loves your partner and doesn't want them to suffer and doesn't want to be the cause of their internal suffering, you can say, I understand, and I'm sorry that I've brought that toward you, that's how you feel, and that I made you feel that way with my actions. And if it wasn't your intention, you can say that. And then you can, with a genuine apology, also genuinely ask, will you forgive me? And that's a really important question, because that's closing the loop on it. It's putting the ball in the person who's been aggravated. It's putting the ball in their court. It's closing the door. It's asking them to make a decision. It's quite finite in a sense, because if you just, okay, I'm sorry, and it's like, yeah, and you sort of let that go, unfortunately, you haven't really outwardly, consciously closed the door on it, and there hasn't been a resolution for even the person that apologized, right? Because, and you have to believe it. So don't, if it's like, no, I don't believe that you're sorry, and here's why. And, you can keep going around the circle, being careful not to attack their character and who they are as a person, but rather looking at the situation and what you're bothered by in the situation. Again, not vilifying the person, but really looking at the situation as a union, as a couple, saying, okay, what happened here? And I'm really not over this, and here's why. And here's what I might need. So, but at some point when you do reach that point of, okay, I can accept your apology, and you've gone around and around that backtracking circle of, okay, really feel understood, really feel like this person respects me and is hearing me and has understood the problem. And if you're not willing to fix it, I mean, that's another conversation, right? Like, if you're really genuinely not sorry and you really can't see that person's point of view, well, then my first inclination is to say, well, you haven't really heard them, because you're still trying to explain away and justify your behavior in some sense. But if you've really gone down that rabbit hole and it's like, I can't understand this, I'm not willing to see their side, or I don't see their side for whatever reason, I mean, well, that might be a time to get some further support on a topic to move through this, because there's something impeding. Some pattern is running there where you still don't feel good enough, or you still, there's something going on if you can't find reconciliation of some sort. And oftentimes, you might just need to take a break and come back to it. Time does help. But, I had a couple where there's an issue over a sport. The husband playing a sport, and there was an issue there. And, the wife had it bottled up for 3 years. Couldn't even watch the sport on television, because just so traumatized by what happened one day while he was playing. They were playing the sport together. And anyhow, just to say, the longer you hold it in also matters. You've built up these stories, but more than the actual traumatic incident, which was a 1-minute incident, the real trauma was holding it for 3 years and not feeling seen and understood, and feeling like she had to deal with it on her own and wasn't going to get the validation, didn't get the validation, didn't feel like she could ask for it, asked for it, just got the rationale, which we talked about, right? Well, but I did it because it was because of the PTSD. It was because I was angry. It's, I was outside of myself. It wasn't me. It wasn't the real me. And what the other party's really looking for is not actually justification. Even if they can sympathize for you, they're looking to be heard. They're looking to be understood. They're looking for acknowledgement and understanding, as we said in the beginning. So if you can wrap your mind around the understanding portion, I think the rest of this conversation, which is, okay, I'm sorry, please forgive me, do you forgive me, thank you if they say yes genuinely, and really you want to say a genuine yes as well right here. We're assuming throughout this whole conversation you genuinely want the best for each other, and you're willing to put in some effort here. It is a precondition for this going successfully. And that's actually Ho'oponopono as well, which is a practice that I can link to as well. It's a practice where we can even do this with ourselves. You don't need a partner, but you can do it to yourself as well. So I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you really, it's a ritual that is quite sacred, and you can do this if there's something happening in your family. You can do it in a household. You can do it for yourself. And you would repeat that. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And you go through that many times, and this somehow relates, because in the conversation you're prefacing it with this understanding, and with this unity on what the issue is. Again, don't have to agree, you don't have to necessarily empathize in this sense that, or sympathize, but you have to say and figure out how to understand what the other person has gone through and their lens. And then if you can find forgiveness, if you can find an apology in there, and then the other person can forgive you. And the apology is for bringing upon distress, right? It's like I'm really sorry that, because your actions, it's funny, we think we're not important, but then your actions make an impact on this person so strongly that it, frustrates them for a whole day or, 3 years. And it's like, you've got another person's heart in your hands to some degree. And if that's not making you important, I don't know what possibly will. So, you really apologize for bringing that person some level of distress and them being in strife, and that your actions contributed to that. And you're not perfect. Neither of you act, well, you're perfect, but you don't act perfectly, and you're just doing what you can. And then, you ask for the forgiveness, and then you get the forgiveness, you hope. And then you go on to next time, 1, 2, 3, and you really make sure that you can commit to that 1, 2, 3, whatever it is you're saying you're going to do. And if you can't commit to it, don't promise it, please. Because I see that a lot. It's like, okay, here's what I should say. Should does not work in couples coaching. I'll tell you that much, because it doesn't actually happen. So should is not going to work. Don't do the thing as a husband or wife that you should do. Do the thing that you're willing to do. What are you willing to do and work toward? And know that it might be imperfect, but especially if it's a big grievance, and I've seen this with, if there's cheating in the relationship, it's like, do you mean it? Don't say it if you don't mean it. And certainly don't go into a process of repair and recovery and rebuilding of trust, which can be hugely crippled and destroyed with PTSD and sometimes the anger that accompanies it. If you're going to rebuild trust, you better well mean it and know that it's going to take some time and actions that really stand in alignment with what it is that you're promising, or else it's quite futile. So just don't do it. If you're not willing to actually do it and put in the work, it's you can't rebuild trust in an instant. It can be broken in an instant, as we know, but you really got, and the forgiveness is not I forgive you for everything, but perhaps I'm willing to forgive you, or I'm willing to work on this with you, right? Like I forgive you for some part of it, but forgiveness is the responsibility of the other party. And so for people that have hurt someone and think, oh, it's all on me to fix this now, and how unfair, it's like, hang on a second. The person that's been hurt has some real work to do as well. And we need to also be gentle. If somebody's coming back to you and saying, look, I see I hurt you, and I'm asking for your forgiveness, that takes courage. And so we also need to give that person a genuine shot. So you got two people, and both really need to kind of be genuine with what it is that they're promising, and what it is that they're asking for, and what it is that they're accepting. So if you bring a foundation of authenticity and real genuine commitment to a solution together, then that helps. That's actually vital. So I hope this has been useful for you. It's some of the musings, I suppose, and insights that really I've gathered in years of listening to these conversations and seeing the parallels and seeing the patterns within them. And couples coaching is such a fascinating thing. And I've had some really tough calls, but this system, or this kind of growing this quality, really helps. And it's certainly an accessible starting point, especially if you feel like your partner doesn't get you. It's like, so you try this then. If your partner doesn't get you, how about you try understanding your partner? And then maybe you teach them. Maybe it rubs off on them. Maybe their animosity and hostility and frustration towards you diminishes. Because that's what it is, right? We just build up more and more resentment, more and more little situations that reinforce that deeper pattern or frustration. I'm not good enough. I'm not important enough. So we just reinforce that again and again with what we see in the world, because our minds are so brilliant at finding corroborating evidence for anything that we believe, especially pain, especially something that's hurt us. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to look out for that, and I'm going to be very diligent, and anything resembling even closely something of that nature is just not okay, and I'm going to shut down, and I'm not going to let that in, and I'm going to be hyper vigilant about my insecurities. And that's what we see, right? That's why when we have new relationships, we bring that old stuff over, because hey, fool me once, kind of story, and we don't give that person a clean slate, and it's very difficult to do so. But anyhow, first step, understanding. Do that via mirroring both words, specific words, so backtracking someone's language, not paraphrasing, but backtracking the specific words they've used. And then if you can get to mimicking their body language and tone of voice, you're in a really good shape to understand them and then find a solution, a mutual solution as a team moving forward. I appreciate you for listening. If you found value in this episode, please do share it with family, friends, perhaps your partner or someone you know that might be struggling in their relationship. I think it could really make a difference for people to hear this strategy. And if you're willing to write a review or subscribe, like the show, wherever it is that you listen, if you just hit some stars up there. I know everyone says it, but it actually makes a huge difference in people finding the show. And that's what we're looking to do, right? Is help as many people as we can with this information that we put out. So that would mean the world to me if you were willing to share it with just one person that you know and share your thoughts on the show. That would really make an impact for me. So thank you for listening. I'll see you back next time, and take good care in the meantime.